Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inspire Europe Plus webinar, Career Assessment for At-Risk Researchers. We're delighted to see so many of you here with us today. My name is Alison Morrisroe. I work for the European University Association, and I'm involved in the Inspire Europe Plus project. And I'm going to launch the webinar today. So before I hand you over to our chair and let you know a little bit about the project, I just wanted to go through some housekeeping rules with you. Next slide, please. So on this webinar platform, there are 3 different ways that you can interact. You will see the chat function on your right-hand side, and this is used for greetings. So please do say hello, tell us who you are, where you're from. If you are experiencing any technical issues, again, you can put them in the chat. And if you wish to share any other remarks, please do so in the chat. However, if you have a specific question for any of our speakers, we would invite you to post it in the Q&A box. And this will first be approved by a member of our team. And once it's been approved, at the end of the webinar, we'll try to answer this question. And you may actually see that some of the speakers might have actually typed an answer to your question as well. So do keep an eye on the Q&A box. And at the very end of the webinar, there will be a survey so that you can tell us what you liked about the webinar or how we could improve. So that's how you can join the conversation with us today. Without further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Inspire Europe Plus project that is organising this webinar today. So next slide, please. The Inspire Europe Plus project is an EU-funded project involving 7 partners and 3 associated partners that strengthens and coordinates support in Europe for researchers at risk. So as you can see, it runs from September 2022 until August 2025, and it is being coordinated by SAR Europe at Maynooth University in Ireland. On the next slide, you will see our consortium members. So as you can see, Scholars at Risk Europe at the Maynooth University, the PAUSE program in France, the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. We have the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki in Greece, the European University Association where I work, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation in Germany, and also the CARA organization in the UK. And we also have 3 associate partners who you will see on the next slide. But I'll tell you a little bit now about what the project aims to achieve. So on the next slide, you will see here that we coordinate many different activities as a part of this project. So in recognition of a shared commitment to excellence in research and to the principles of freedom of inquiry and academic freedom that are essential for world-class research, our project coordinates activities across Europe to support researchers at risk. So this includes direct guidance through webinars, such as today's webinar, and trainings, building institutional capacity and preparedness for support, advising national level initiatives, informing European policy, and raising awareness to diversify support for research at risk in Europe. So today's webinar advances that work of coordination by focusing on the very important topic of career assessment for at-risk researchers. So I'm delighted to introduce you now to our moderator, who has been involved in the Inspire Europe Plus project for quite some time. So the predecessor that ran from 2019 to 2022, and this current Inspire Europe Plus project. So I will invite Beate Schultz now to join us on screen, who is the founder of Schultz Consulting, Training and Coaching Company. And we're delighted to have you with us here today to moderate, Beate.
Thank you very much, Alison, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you joining this session, this webinar on supporting researchers at risk, with a special consideration on assessing research careers. It's my pleasure to be able to chair this webinar and being able to present to you a number of eminent speakers throughout the session. I would also like to set the scene a bit by, first of all, introducing some thoughts both on the Inspire Europe program, but also on today's webinar. So most of you are probably representing host institutions or are mentors. You are our most important target group that we would like to speak to this afternoon. But equally important is the group that we are concerned with, namely scholars at risk. Now, just imagine you're forced to move to a different country to a different academic system that you are not really familiar with, where you don't know the rules, the procedures, and so on, or the culture at large. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in this totally different environment, but you still want to pursue your career. You still want to carry out your research. You still want to hold on to your dreams, to your visions. So what next? So you need strong partners to be able to accommodate you, but also who are equally able to understand your situation. This is what we are trying to focus on today. As Alison has kindly mentioned before, in the predecessor program, Inspire Europe, we were specifically in charge of conducting a high-level or carrying out a high-level coaching program with 35 selected scholars at risk who were nominated by participating organizations. And this was not only a very fulfilling task, it also gave us or provided us with some evidence concerning the needs of those scholars, what proved to be successful in view of their career development, and what could also be lessons learned by the host institutions and mentors. And what we saw is when carrying out a career tracking survey, looking at the trajectories of those who we had been working with during the different rounds, we found, for example, that it was immensely important that people found adequate mentors who were kind of channeling them into the system where they were hosted. So that familiarized them with rules, with the culture at large, but also help them to build an own network. Mentoring was especially important, and equally partnering. Given the fact that most scholars at risk who come to a country might have only very short-term funding through organizations like the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation in Germany, the POSE program in France, to name just a few, they have to prepare or early on consider what will be the next step after funding will have expired. Therefore, many of them are starting to work on proposals to gain own research funding, also with the idea to fund their own salaries early on, but assuming or given the fact that they are usually not entirely familiar with the funding situation, with the habits of funding institutions in the host country, they're also facing severe challenges. So what we found in conducting our career tracking was that if scholars were able to partner with local researchers, especially those who had already made a bit of a career, who were quite familiar with the system, this proved to be quite beneficial for them in partnership to gain own funds or to raise own and joint funding to pursue own projects. So that was a first very important issue which we found. Second, what we observed was helping those researchers define and getting aware of their own skills profile, of their own scientific profile, was a very important measure. And we're definitely going to hear also from the other speakers what their considerations on these matters are, which I will soon introduce. Other than that, we could also see that, and you're probably aware of the career situation for researchers in your own country, where in some areas and disciplines, there is quite a severe competition for a limited number of positions that also the locals are facing. So therefore, it might be useful at some stage also to consider careers outside or beyond academia, which might still be linked to research, but which might also require intersectoral mobility. In order to accomplish that task, it is usually useful, and that was evidenced also through our survey, that scholars at risk are getting supported by career specialists, career advisors at their host institutions, but also by their mentors if they are familiar also with a wider scope outside academia. However, and that is also an important finding, the European Commission, in its strategy to support or to help reaching gender equity in research, has for a long time been advocating to move away from changing the people, or changing the women in this particular case, to changing the institutions and the culture. And from our observations, we found that this might also be the case for scholars at risk, or accommodating scholars at risk in our system, meaning it should be a source for reflection for our systems to consider, is it worthwhile or to stick to our habits in carrying out research assessment, or in carrying out merit assessment in the same way as we do it. So for a long time, there has been an overly strong focus on metrics, for example, numbers of publications, so-called journal impact factors, and so forth. And we find that this is a specific obstacle and challenge, particularly for scholars at risk who come in from an entirely different system, who might not have published in English to a great extent, who might not have published in the very well-known international peer-reviewed journals, or who in some areas might have focused on regional aspects in their research, which might not be so largely on the agenda of their research disciplines in Europe, for example. So, but similarly, we can ask ourselves, and we can also observe, for example, ongoing trends like the Coalition on Advancing Research Assessment that is increasingly taking notice of the different prerequisites that an individual brings to the system, and also their so-called, or potentially their life histories. And to account for that, in also validating a researcher's potential, seems to be an important feature, and this is probably or potentially also food for thought for today. I would like to leave it here for the moment and pass over to Svetlana Dimitrova. She's a project manager and is representing the EURAXESS for our network, and as a leader at Sofia University in Bulgaria. And this is a network, and especially EURAXESS is an invaluable source of information or resource for information for incoming researchers or researchers in Europe. So she will guide us through the offers by EURAXESS and how, from an institutional perspective, scholars at risk might be helped to advance their way and pass on with their successful trajectories in Europe. So Svetlana, it's my pleasure to hand over to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Beate. I'm really happy to be with all of you today and share with you all that might help both organizations and researchers to integrate better in the European labor market, not only in academic environment. So please, the next slide. I am, as mentioned by Beate, the leader of the Science for Refugee Hub of the EURAXESS network, and as such, I communicate with a lot of refugees. So my idea today is to put the shoes of the refugee researcher and to see from their point of view what they would need once they arrive in Europe and once they have already their legal status available and they look for a job. They found, for instance, a specific researcher found a place already, he or she was advised and applied somewhere, someone helped him, and they arrive in the institution. But this is not the end of the help that they need. I would, if I am a researcher, I would need someone to help me with the local culture, with the language, including language courses. I would need someone to help me understand the local research system, also the organizational culture where I am based in. Please, the next slide. Next. What I would, sorry, I meant next that I would need would be someone to help me with specific, concrete stuff like accommodation, bank account, healthcare, family care. And these are all people that I need to help me with all this stuff. Of course, gaining some knowledge for the research system, for how work the internal rules, what are they, what are the procedures, and then of all this long list, I would need first thing to assess my soft skills, and then if I don't have any that is needed here in this new environment, to help me with gaining these skills, accommodating skills like problem solving, time management, etc. So please, the next slide. If we put the other shoes, the shoes of the organizations, what should organization ensure? It's again people. They have to ensure staff that would take care of all these general issues like accommodation, banking, etc. This is kind of a welcome office that exists in most of the organizations, research organizations, academic ones in Europe, but also in some public, other type of public and some industrial organizations as well, private sector. Also, they, if they arrive in academic organization, the local organization would need to ensure again people, staff that would take care of academic integration process, like academic mentor. So both type of integration mentor and academic mentor are really needed to be ensured by the local organization if they would like the fasten the process and ensure efficiency of the process. Next slide, please. So where is EURAXESS and why I was invited here to this important webinar for all kind of stakeholders, both organizations and researchers. If someone didn't hear about EURAXESS up to now, I suppose these are not too many around you, except in the case of researchers that might not know about EURAXESS yet. This is a global network. It includes 43 countries in Europe, We also have worldwide officers in all continents, and it includes more than 600 research organizations. Almost, I checked today, it goes up to 700 almost, and more than 1,600 contact points, people like me that work, that are based in these research organizations, not only universities, and that work for the benefit of the researchers and for their better integration, not only of refugee researchers, but also all kind of incoming and local researchers that are based in these organizations. The Science for Refugees initiative of the European Commission and of the EURAXESS network that also accommodated the Era for Ukraine initiative of the European Commission cares about integration of refugee researchers specifically, also for displaced researchers, for instance, those that come and continue coming from Ukraine. The next one, please. A little bit more about our staff, because looking at this list of what the staff could do and in what is experienced and professional, you could imagine how this staff could help you, both organizations and researchers. First thing, we are really experienced, and we are also a global team. Then we offer our services for free, and our services are professional. Then what we usually offer, this is a personalized assistance for researchers that are here in Europe. We support both career development and mobility at all stages of the researcher career. We also provide dedicated integration support for the refugee researchers. So if you are to host a refugee researcher, you need to just reach your EURAXESS staff, or please next slide. Or just to reach the national coordinator of the local EURAXESS network. Because if you don't have EURAXESS staff, we can still help you. We have 5 dedicated hubs for talent management. This is very much related to the career within academia. Also, we have a dedicated hub for careers beyond academia and for scientific entrepreneurship. I already mentioned about the Science for Refugee hub that is practically led by me. And we also have a hub that supports mobility. Respective online toolkits that include a lot of tools and instruments, most of them available online, like self-assessment tools, career planning assistance. We have a lot of video recorded training sessions on soft skills and on specific support on application preparation for grants and funding. We also run a European job portal that is the biggest portal, the largest portal in Europe for highly qualified specialists. And we also provide mentoring programs for academic integration, also for integration in the industrial research beyond academia. Next slide. If we go back to the case of a researcher and you are thinking on how to use the EURAXESS support. And if you reach the EURAXESS contact point or the national coordinator, what you should count this staff to do for you. If you are a specific university in Europe, you can rely on the EURAXESS contact point or on the national coordinator that you'll be provided with support for accommodation, this whole list that was mentioned before: family care, language courses, introduction to the local tradition and habits, cultural events that would help for integration. Also, guided assistance to access the online tools that are available on the EURAXESS portal and to the video recorded sessions. EURAXESS mentoring program targets the integration of the researcher in the European research systems, and if some researcher is advised to join this program, he or she could get help and knowledge to learn about how the research system works in the local country, specific country in Europe. What are the laws, the regulations, the institutions that are related to the research system? Also, specific mentors could help with the internal rules and procedures in the university, because we have currently about 300 mentors from different institutions in Europe. Also, some mentors from outside Europe that could help in another type of mobility or migration, going to somewhere else, to another continent, not in Europe. Next slide, please. This is the last slide practically, and this is a short story about long integration process of a Venezuelan refugee researcher that arrived in Europe, concretely in Italy, without knowing the local language, with no accommodation, no contacts, no chance to continue the PhD studies, no financial resources, no nothing. So before contacting our Science for Refugee Hub, she had to fight for her surviving within 15 months, language courses at the same time, cleaning 16 hours a day to survive in this environment. So once in a library, she was looking on internet for some available information, and she find about the Bridge project, the first EURAXESS project that was dedicated to integration of refugee researchers, and thanks to which we actually created our hub. Since then, 5 years, we continue working with her, and let me make the main stress of this presentation. The only thing that makes difference while you make efforts to integrate a mobile researcher and a refugee researcher is the psychological situation of the refugee research. In most of the cases, this is the first thing that they need: someone to talk, someone to calm them a bit, that there are people behind them, that they will be offered help from specialists that will actually take care of their survival here in Europe. So psychological help is on top of everything. We continue talking with Annie. We continue communicating. Of course, this is an online support on myself because I am not in Italy, I'm based in Bulgaria, but we still continue our work with her. We started with a clear plan on how first to get the refugee status. Then I encouraged her to read and to follow the publications in her specialty in order to be in line with what happens in her scientific area. Then, when she was pretty much stable and got her status already, we connected her with the local contact point in the university of the city where she is based. And this local contact point supported us in introducing her to the university staff, to make some connections. And these connections and this work with the local university staff helped her to be hired through a project. This was the first step, and now she feels back in academic environment, and she also was advised to enter the mentoring program. Since then, already more than a year she is in this program. She has 3 mentors already that guide her through the whole process of academic integration. Now she is preparing to apply for a grant to continue with her PhD study. And as I wrote, the story continues because I found another mentor for her from Italy. She's career EURAXESS contact point, and she's career advice specialist and knows the situation and the funding system for researchers in Italy. So I suppose we will be successful in the end, and she will manage to continue her PhD studies. Thank you. The next slide is just to say thank you and to offer our help to all of you, researchers and organizations.
Thank you so much, Svetlana, for this very impressive story, this enlightening talk, and also this really moving example. So when I introduced you, I mentioned that EURAXESS is an invaluable resource of information. But now I would also like to add, EURAXESS is an invaluable group of people, of individuals who are very committed to help and being expert on the matter, also for science for refugees. With that, I would like to pass on the torch to Dhayalan Velauthapillai, I hope I pronounced your name almost correctly, yes, who's based at the Western Norway Universities of Applied Sciences, and who will share with us the perspective of a mentor, telling us what his experience is in helping and supporting refugee scholars. Please, Dhayalan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Beata. Thank you. First of all, thanks for inviting me to have this presentation. So actually, after hearing Beata and Svetlana, I think that you have already mentioned the issues which I wanted to raise here. But I will just first introduce myself. I am Dhayalan Velauthapillai. I'm a professor at Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, situated in Bergen, Norway. And my institution, of course, we are very new to these researchers at risk scheme. So my institution, my university, of course, we have nearly 15,000 students. and we have nearly 3,000 employees at my university. So we started working with researchers at risk in around 2019-20. So we were offered to host one researcher. So we started to form a committee at HUL. That's the starting point. So I just want to narrate a case here. So we started with forming a committee. Since we have 4 different faculties: Faculty of Engineering and Faculty of Teaching, Faculty of Health, and Faculty of Economics and Social Studies. So we got a list of candidates, and we were supposed to find the candidate which we could host. That was the first thing. That was a challenge, actually. So we had an administrative support as well in our committee. So we just looked into the profiles, and we were looking into different candidates, and we were just thinking of, who is going to mentor the coming researchers. So that is one of the issues. So since I was there, so I thought I could propose somebody in the relevant field such that I could be a mentor. And my institute supported it, and the faculty supported it. Then, of course, we selected one person, one researcher who was working relative to my field. So that was the first thing. Then we thought, okay, that is in place. So we had meetings and so forth, and the process went on. But it took nearly 1 year, 1.5 years to get him here to Norway. It was a corona situation those days, so it was very difficult. So the researcher, he came here to Norway with his family. So the first thing we learned was, we were just thinking about the scholar, and we were thinking about having facilities for him, mentoring him in education, teaching, and research, and so forth. But we didn't think about the family. So here we have a researcher with a well-educated wife with 2 children. The children are the age of 17 and 14 years. They were going to school. So suddenly, we have a situation that, as you all know, as Svetlana pointed out, if it is a family who seek refuge in a country, in Norway, for example, then of course we have all the facilities, we have the authorities. They will look into the things Svetlana was referring to: banking, housing, schooling, everything, health, everything will be done by the authorities. So you have someone to assist them. But in this case, as a host institution, we were just thinking about the scholar, but we have a whole family in front of us. So that was a big challenge for us. The first thing, housing is a challenge, because as you all know, to have housing for a family who have just arrived from another country, just for a short period, because our institute had funding just for 1 year for the scholars. So just for 1 year for a family, it was very difficult to find housing. So in that case, we saw, okay, we have to focus not only on the scholar, we have to focus on the family as well. So housing was the first thing, so we solved it. So that was in place, no problem. What about schooling? The children who came here, they were in these, they were 14 years and 17 years. The eldest child, he had already completed his we call it the high school. Actually, he has completed the high school. He was supposed to start with the university, but that curriculum is not recognized in Norway. So what happens? We have a 17-year-old, a father, a mother. They didn't know what to do. 17-year-old, he doesn't get a curriculum here in Norway. He cannot go to school. Nobody is to help. So there we saw that we should have planned this beforehand. But some or other, we were there, we got our contacts in place, and we had discussions, we had meetings with the school authorities here, and because somebody has come to, we cannot reveal the identity either. So we have been just telling the authorities here that, okay, here we have a professor at HUL at my university, and he has a family, so they have to start, the children have to start at school. That's the only thing we could reveal. So it was very tough, and it took some time, but some or other, because of all these, meetings and all these persuasions of these authorities, somehow the child could start to take the courses again at the high school level. Again, he has to start it again. The same thing with the 14-year-old. So these are the things which we didn't plan. So that was a learning for us. That is number one. Then, what about the spouse? She was very well educated. So she came here. She has come here, and she is at home. No network. No, she doesn't know the language. So what happens? And she was working in her own country. So there should be a network there. So we had to work on that as well. So the mentors here at my university, they started helping the family. So these are the things we didn't plan beforehand. So this, of course, we learned afterwards. So that is regarding the family. What about the scholar? As Beate pointed out, we have a scholar, we have a researcher, a professor, 50 years, has a long educational background, has been doing a lot of research, has been mentoring a lot of students. Now he's in a new place, new environment, new cultural environment, new educational environment. Everything is new. Language is new. Everything is new. The way of communication is new. Everything is new. And he would feel, if it's myself, I would feel worthless. New country, and you don't know what to do. So he felt the same, but fortunately we had planned it well. So he was involved in my research group. I have a international research group. So he was involved in that. He got students to work with. He started working with research. So that was a good thing. At the same time, so he wanted to teach. He wanted to work with the students. But the language is the barrier again. And the way of teaching, the teaching environment, everything is different in Europe, especially in Norway, it's a bit different as well. So he must get used to that. So what we did was we arranged the classes with another professor. So he associated with another professor and with me as well. So he started coming into the classes and started helping the students in the beginning. So in that way, he gained some experience. He gained some knowledge. Intercultural, that experience is very important, even though language is a barrier. So he did everything in English, so it helped. So after 1 year, after 6-8 months, he started teaching himself in a subject with another professor. So that helped. So teaching, involving the researcher in teaching and research, that is number one thing we should do. So that, of course, we were able to do because we had planned it beforehand. So then that is okay. But the thing is, there was another difficulty. We didn't think about it beforehand. His diploma had to be recognized in Norway if he wanted to apply for the jobs. It is a big process. It takes months. Actually, what we should have done is we should have asked him to apply for the recognition while he was waiting for his visa. That, of course, we didn't do. So he did it after coming here in Norway. So it took another 6-8 months to get the recognition. So that is another thing we had to think about. And originally, our university planned just for 1 year. That is, I don't know why we thought that 1 year was enough. I don't know. Because, for a family, for a professor with his family to get settled in a new country, to get the language in place and get the basic things in place, it takes a lot of time. Health issues, there are a lot of things. At the same time, the family was, his family at home, it got intimidated by the authorities, and there are a lot of psychological problems involved. So all these things are there. So 1 year of involvement of such a researcher at an institution, that is not enough. So we persuaded somehow our leaders, and we got the period extended for 2 years. So then, of course, we have Norwegian language classes. So our researcher, he joined these classes, but at the same time, we didn't have any courses for his spouse. So that is another thing which we didn't think about, So he has to pay, So it is a burden for the family. He has to pay to attend, or she has to pay to attend the classes. So that is another thing we have to look into in the future. That's what we have decided now. Okay, so our scholar, he did well. He's a very hardworking person. He has been working day and night. He took initiatives himself. He took contact with other academics, researchers. He searched for funding opportunities. So we had a network. So we used this network. This network was available for our researcher. And he was using these. He was very active. He was applying for projects, but he didn't receive any fundings. But anyhow, after 2 years, he passed a course on teaching and learning in higher education. He passed the Norwegian course. He published more than 12 journal articles in the span of 2 years. He co-supervised a number of my students. He coordinated some activities, international webinars and seminars and so forth. He was involved in joint grant applications. Although he had achieved so much during his short tenure, and we knew that he was a resource person, sadly, my university couldn't find him a permanent position after 2 years. So in the latter stages of the second year, we had a lot of challenges. Our scholar had applied for almost 50 different job vacancies in Norway. He didn't receive any response for most of the applications. He had even applied for 14 vacant positions at our own university. He was interviewed for a few vacant positions, but he couldn't compete with the other applicants because, as you all know, it's very competitive. So a person over 50 years, new to the country, language is a barrier, is not that attractive to the labor market here in Europe. So when you attend an interview as well, there are cultural differences. The new researcher who comes to Norway, he cannot understand how an interview works, what are the expectations of the interviews and so forth. So there were some issues there as well. So in the last few months of the second year, we had to try hard to find some solution. The researcher he had a lot of difficulties. He didn't know what to do. What happens to his children? What happens to his children after 2 years? What is going to happen to them? They are finishing their schools now. What should I take to the other country? Where to go? He cannot return to his home country. So this was the situation for him. So we couldn't find an academic position for him. So we found some, funding to accommodate him here at HUL. Our leadership up to the rector level, everybody was, they wanted to help. So they found some funding to have him for a short while, 6 to 8 months, after he could find another job. So this was the situation. But anyhow, after some mentoring, after he came to know how to face an interview here in Norway and so forth, we got a good news. He got a job. He got a permanent researcher job here and at the institution. So now everything is in place. So it has become a very positive history for us. It's a very big positive learning curve for us. So now we have 2 new researchers at our institute. Now we know what to do beforehand. So as a mentor, as a human being, I have learned a lot from my colleague. So I have got a colleague, a good friend, and good human being. So I think these type of things is very important. As a mentor, as an institution, we must remember the following things. I will just summarize it. First, we are not just hosting one individual. Actually, we are hosting the whole family with spouse and children. That is one thing. And the other thing, of course, we must have a friendly, inspiring, and understanding and motivating environment at the institution level. That is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dhayalan, for this very impressive story. And I was really longing to hear there was a happy ending, which in this case worked out. But it should be an encouragement for everybody to try hard and keep track and never give up. This is also maybe a good transition to our next speaker, whom we will call Ubuntu for this session. You won't see him on screen for privacy reasons. He is a scholar at risk, and he will be, the target group speaking to us. And I'm happy to give the floor to him now. Please, Ubuntu.
Thank you. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you a lot, Beate, and Inspire Europe for organizing this event and for inviting me to share a few thoughts. So before I begin, I should probably start where Dhayalan ended and kind of try to point out that, scholars face unique challenges, and I think people have different circumstances. And if I can speak for myself, I am single, I am straight, I don't have any disabilities, I have no parental responsibilities. And these kind of things made my integration and the way I've navigated my situation a little bit easier, I suppose, compared to other people. So I guess, scholars with families and disabilities and, LGBTQ colleagues and those coming from conflict areas, as Svetlana was talking about, I think have different experiences, and I think it's important for host institutions to ensure that their kind of support that they receive is kind of like tailored to those unique challenges. So I just wanted to point that out, building up on what Dhayalan was saying. So 10 minutes, that's not so much time. So I'll just use these few minutes to just talk about what I think are kind of like opportunities and also challenges facing scholars as they try to navigate their life abroad. And also before that, I think just a point to emphasize, which is also, I think, mentioned by Dhayalan. I just want to also reiterate, this call for ensuring that, there's a need to provide a necessary infrastructure and support to ensure that scholars really settle well and can make the most out of the placement in their host institutions. I think the experience there from Norway was was good and also had its own challenges. So I think it's important for having this necessary infrastructure, which I think in my case here I would like to point out that I want to say thanks to the University of Gothenburg for the kind of infrastructure and the kind of support that they have set up for my integration. So I think the SARA team there and the department and the host institution that I am part of, I think they have made it very easy for me to settle down. So again, I'll just say a few words about some of the opportunities that I see and also challenges. And again, like I said, these may not be applicable to other people. I think, as I've said, there are different circumstances and different experiences. I think one thing that is important here is the need to kind of try to strike the balance between scholar and the risk element. You know, I think the whole program is called Scholars at Risk. I think sometimes we tend to focus very much on the risky part, which is also important in offering protection and offering a different kind of support and people facing different levels of trauma. So the risk element is very important. But I think it's important to also not forget the scholar part of it. And I think in this case, where I am, I have seen opportunities for applying for grants, which I think are important, because if a scholar gets these grants, then you could be able to sustain your SAR position beyond the usual 1 year or 2 year situation. But as we know, the grant infrastructure and the grant environment is quite competitive, but I think it's important to have these opportunities. The other opportunity which I have seen is, training for different kind of skills. I think I've quite attended a number of different training, and I think I would just like to point one which is related to the organizers of today's event, and that is the Inspireurope coaching exercise, which I was part of. I think it was quite useful in giving us tools on how to navigate the very competitive process of applying for grant. I'm currently working on a Marie Curie postdoctoral proposal, and I think I would say that if it wasn't for the coaching program by Inspireurope and the inputs I got from Beate, I think I wouldn't be in a position to be applying or to be preparing for this Marie Curie fellowship. I think there are also opportunities for networking. We've already talked about a lot of scholars coming from such risky environment tend to be very lonely, and they tend to, struggle with isolation, anxiety, and those kind of things. And I think it's important for host institution to provide opportunities to network. And I think I was lucky to have those opportunities. We've attended events like the Philip Schwarz stakeholders event. We had a very interesting event organized by SAR in Kalmar last year, which brought different scholars from, I think there were like 14 different scholars. It was very nice to hear different experiences, of different scholars and their stories, and exploring areas for collaboration, and also just fostering solidarity, because it's good to talk and share ideas and support each other. I think these are things that we don't really think much about them, but they make a big difference to scholars who find themselves in completely new environment in Europe. On the same vein is also, I think, something also Beate mentioned, as much as we want to ensure that, scholars kind of maintain their career trajectories, I think we have under no illusion that I think academia is increasingly becoming competitive. I think Dhayalan just gave an experience there of this scholar in Norway and how he was really struggling to get into the Norwegian job market. So I think there are opportunities also to explore opportunities beyond academia, opportunities in industry and elsewhere. And I think I was privileged to attend some of the seminars of which some of these issues were mentioned. I think it's a shame, but it's also a reality. I think a lot of scholars maybe want to continue their life in academia. But again, the realities are also, it's getting really competitive. So it's good to explore those opportunities. And again, here is also where host institution can come in and make sure that scholars get support to explore these possibilities beyond academia. I think that that's what I would probably sum up as some of the opportunities, kind of starting with the good news at least. I think the challenges have been mentioned by all of the speakers. I think Svetlana, from a more kind of refugee perspective, I think the main thing, as we all know, is the short-term nature of these SAR placement, kind of very precarious environment that scholars find themselves in. It's even more challenging, as we have heard from Norway, in terms of, one of your families and all that. And of course, this again gets worse when scholars feel more isolated and lonely, and can get into mental health issues and anxiety. I think, again, these are areas where I have not experienced personally, but I think other scholars will find themselves in at least those situations. I think host institution can play a role. Obviously, the other question is, of course, the issue of mobility. I think the nature of these SAR placements are very short, as we know. So you're in most cases, you're always on the move. You move from one university to the other, or move from one country to the other. This can be mentally exhausting, and I think you're kind of getting into new environment every day. So this can take a mental toll to different scholars. I timed myself, so I think I'm almost out of time. But I think just my final thoughts will be to reiterate the point I made in the beginning, that scholars at risk placement should be a kind of a career, should be seen as a career development opportunity, not just an avenue to offer protection for scholars who are facing risks. Like I said, the program is scholars at risk, so it's important that we put so much effort on the risky part, which is totally understandable. But also it's important to put so much effort and resources on the scholar part of the scholars at risk, to make sure that scholars are supported where they need support. So I would like to stop there, and I'm happy to respond to any questions or queries if they'll be there.
Thank you very much, Ubuntu, for this original tone, and thank you also for your very kind feedback. I can only emphasize again what pleasure it was working with you, and wishing you good luck with everything that you plan. So we've arrived almost at the end of our session, but not quite, because there are important questions to answer. And hopefully you will all have a little bit of more time to listen or ask further questions. So the first is, and I think that is probably directed to Svetlana, namely, one person is asking, I wonder whether the EURAXESS network provides services for researchers in the UK and how they can get in touch. Svetlana, would you feel prepared to answer?
Thank you, Beate. Practically, right now I'm getting the link that I will send to this, where you can find all of the national links to national portals, and respectively in each, here is the link, in each national portal you can find contacts including UK.
Right. So which means that also the UK is part of the network, right?
Of course it is, yes.
Okay.
43 countries in Europe.
Excellent. So and that is wider definitely than the European Union. It probably covers all of the European research area. Thank you very much for that. Then there's a question on how to join joint work without bureaucratic delays. That's probably a bit difficult to answer, but who would like to go for that? Maybe Dhayalan, because you were dealing with such issues in practice. What would you recommend?
I think we should know all the details of the researcher and his family, what are the needs are, as far as recognition of his diploma, that is one important thing. But about any recognition of curriculums of the children, these type of things, of course, we can start before they arrive, so it will be very easy for us to work on. So I think that is one thing, and the other thing, of course, to cope up with these difficulties with bureaucratical thing, I think this scheme has to be focused at the institution level. We must have these type of webinars. That is very important. Information meetings at the institution level, not only at the institution level, at the bureaucracy level as well. In the municipal councils here in Norway, if I take an example from Norway, so these type of things, of course, we have to take at the institutional level, at the municipality level, at the governmental level. So that is very important. Information is the important thing, to reduce these type of delays.
Very good. I think this is probably true for most of the elements that scholars at risk are concerned, namely where to find information, how to navigate through the procedures, and that is why it is so important to have people like you, Dhayalan, and you, Svetlana, helping people to navigate, knowing the respective systems better. And also, like you explained, Svetlana, in your case, you were working on Italy, being based in Bulgaria yourself. So help from a supranational level is incredibly important, obviously. So looking on the Q&A side, I do not see any more questions for the moment. This is giving me the opportunity to thank all the speakers once more for their very impressive contributions. Like, as you could see, we were approaching our topic from a 360-degree perspective. And hopefully this was giving you also some inspirations for your future work. Having said that, I would like to pass on again to Alison to close and give you potentially an outlook on some of the next activities by the Inspire Europe Plus project. Please, Alison, if you want to take.
Thank you, Beata. Yes, I'll move here so you can see me. And thank you to all the speakers again for your input. So I just wanted to thank you all for attending and let you know that we will share the presentation with you as well as the recording. It will be put on EUA's YouTube channel as well as SAR's channel as well. If you would like to connect with us, you can do so. You can email the Inspire Europe email address, or you can visit the website to find out more about upcoming events. There will be several more webinars and training sessions taking place, which will be posted on the website, and you'll also receive a direct invitation via email from us as well. So we look forward to seeing you at future events. And we hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. And if I'm not mistaken, you should be able to answer a very short survey. If you click on survey on the right hand side, just to let us know what you liked about this webinar and how we could improve in the future. So thank you once again, and we hope to see you all at a future event.